And welcome everybody to the 30th episode, another pillar that we're going to go over here of the #InvestorFuse podcast. I am your host, Scott Bauer, and today, very blessed to have CEO of InvestorFuse, Dan Schwartz. Dan, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having this. It's been a long time coming.
It really has. It really has. Let me give you a little bit of background about Dan, and then I'll let him kind of take over. He really has a passion for helping the overwhelmed real estate entrepreneur work smarter and earn more by setting up effective systems. After launching InvestorFuse, which is a lead management workspace for real estate investing, he's helped bring the power of Podio to hundreds of happy investors and has really built a strong community around the technology. When he's not working or investing, you're going to find Dan traveling, drumming, or helping other entrepreneurs grow their business. So, with that being said, Dan, why don't you go ahead and give the listeners more about your background and who you are and kind of what you're focused on now?
Yeah. So Scott and I go back a little ways, first of all, just to put it into context. We met at a Collective Genius event. Actually, not that long ago.
5 years ago?
Maybe 4 or 5 years ago, when we were just sort of had experience in real estate, but we were coming up in the game. So we've been good friends, kind of holding each other accountable through that journey. Yep. So it's awesome to get to come onto his new platform and talk about, what I've been doing and how I can help your listeners out. So I started off my real estate journey in 2010 wholesaling. And the reason I became a wholesaler was because I wanted to have financial freedom while I was performing music full time. So I was touring in a band full time. And it's hard to flip houses when you're traveling from city to city. So luckily, I found this tool, Podio, that let me create the exact structures to manage my business so that I didn't need to really worry about a lot of the process details when I was out on the road. My team had more or less a framework of how to execute their lead pipeline. So that actually became one of my skill sets, is just setting up systems for other people to run and really creating a flipping machine that can work without you. And it became an obsession of mine, because at first, when you think about it, and I'm sure a lot of you listening to this might feel that resistance to but I have to do everything. Scott, I know you can definitely relate.
Yeah.
How can I build? It's flipping. There's so many subtleties involved. How can you systemize this? How can you outsource? How can you create a machine out of such a complex process? It's possible. Look at companies like Amazon.com and think about Jeff Bezos.
Right.
It's possible, since someone's actually done that, it's possible to systemize your business and scale it to the level that you desire. So I realized that the thing that was missing for a lot of people was an effective way to manage their leads. And that's the one thing that I find to be the common denominator across all investing strategies, whether you're a wholesaler, whether you're a rehabber, whether you're buying multifamily properties. If you're not following up in a systematic way, if you're not collecting the right data points for your team to effectively work this new lead through to close, then you're just going to do it willy-nilly using whatever's in your brain. And that's what I did for a long time. And a deal came in where we lost $30,000 potential dollars. The seller called us and actually said, I called you guys, but I guess you didn't get back to me in time. I just put in a contract with another wholesaler for this amount. He was like a landlord. So he told us the nitty gritty, and the pain of losing that made me realize, oh my God, I need to perfect follow-up. And started teaching people how to do that and how to set up basically lead management systems on Podio. And that turned into this whole organization, InvestorFuse, which is now a 15-person company serving around 600 companies. And we'll get into it, but we actually just recently launched off of Podio due to some inherent limitations with what you can do. And really it's the complexity of Podio. And we released something that's quite revolutionary for this space. And it's a totally new, fresh breath of air for investors to just focus on what matters and have more fun doing their job, which is at the end of the day why we're all doing this. We want our day-to-day, we want our livelihoods to feel as much like play as possible. So that's right. Sort of at the root of what I do and what I teach.
Right. And I would say that, it's probably, like you said, it's one of the most important things for any investor out there, period, is to, be able to manage and handle their leads and make sure that there's a spot where, things get followed up on a timely manner, and really even without you thinking about it. The way that I know InvestorFuse is built, there are automatic follow-up sequences that were built on purpose, right? Because now you stay in front of clients and you stay in front of possible leads that you might otherwise forget about. And that's something that is truly, truly, truly powerful. So, really when you got started, it was about flipping houses, and then you decided that you wanted to be able to build a system, or you were struggling with not being able to flip houses when you were traveling and being on the go. And so let's talk about how InvestorFuse has allowed people to, I can even talk about myself, right? Allowed people to really build a scalable business without having all of the overhead of having a ton of people right on, under one roof, so to speak. Let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah. Well, can I interview you a little bit?
Sure. Let's do it.
So we always joke that for the longest time, Scott crushed it as a one-man show, just brute force hustle, learning the game, learning the market. And you were kind of doing that even before you started using InvestorFuse. But what changed when you started to use like an organized, effective business process with support for people that understood that process? Like how did that help you grow?
Well, it just allows you to put the key people in the right spot. Okay. So if there is, if you have all the information under one area and you can easily pass off the information to somebody else without losing it, that's really what allows you to grow. And even just being a one-man show, it was easier to have one spot where I have all the information. I can see where everything is going in one database, so that it wasn't necessarily as difficult to scale, I guess. And once you do start to scale and add more people into the team, now all of a sudden you can take those individual processes and you can offload them to different people, right?
Yeah.
So if you have a leads manager, here's what your job is within the organization. Here's where you can find your information. And that goes for every different person that's in your organization.
People forget the biggest part of this conversation, which is 80% of your revenue in this business comes from calling up a seller that you haven't talked to in a long time. Follow up. That's like your whole business comes down to it. And it's one of the most underserved areas in the tech side of real estate investing, which is why InvestorFuse focuses 100% on that follow-up aspect. And I guess just to preempt one of the questions you'll ask about, like what is the feature that makes people the most money? It's the follow-up sequences. It's the ability to automate your follow-up using technology.
Yeah.
So in InvestorFuse, let's say you can't get a hold of a seller that just called in. Well, there's two ways to do it. You can just remember or set a task for yourself to automatically just keep calling this person back, which is what the system reminds you to do automatically without having to think, for 6 times. And then after the 6th time, you can opt to put this seller on a sequence, which is basically text, email, and even slide broadcast voicemails that are sent out automatically on your behalf, personalized in your language. So if you think about how you would treat one lead, let's pretend you got one lead a month and like your whole livelihood depended on staying on top of that lead. What would that look like through the pipeline? How would you handle that lead? Well, we use that mentality to build out a system that lets you handle each individual lead scaled. So if you had 100 leads, they would get treated the same way.
Right.
It's really a function of automation. Those sequences have made people a lot of money that you don't even have to, you just forget about it. And you can also create your own sequences and change the messages and add different message types. And you could do it after you send the offer just to keep them engaged. You could send it to dead leads that you haven't talked to in a long time to kick up opportunities that you wouldn't have otherwise kicked up without brute force or a rock solid VA that is like the dream VA that doesn't really exist, right?
Well, and like I said, I mean, it allows you to scale. Like you had mentioned, if you do this with one person, well, now all of a sudden you can scale it to 100 people. It allows you to be in front of these people that You might not otherwise be, because we only have 24 hours in a day. And so if you have, let's even call it 1,000 leads, you can't call 1,000 people a day. I mean, you could, but you'd be on the phone constantly. There's no way that you could talk to that many people. However,
burn out, you give up.
You're right. But if you can automate most of it, and you can be sending them emails, text messages, slide broadcasts, whatever it is that appear that you're actually sending it to them live, that's how you stay in front of people. And that's literally how you make tons of money. And I'm the person that can attest to that. So
yeah, you've gotten a lot of good follow-up deals, right?
Ton of follow-up deals. In my opinion, no lead left behind is something that has always stuck in my head. And that's what it's all about. We don't want any of these leads that we pay so much money to generate. We want to touch and have an opportunity to act on all of them. Right. So,
yeah, unfortunately it's just not a sexy part of this business, which is why investors that are in it for the money and for the freedom, they kind of gloss over this part because it's just not fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that was actually an opportunity to really just figure this out once and for all, and just to keep making it as simple and streamlined as possible so that eventually you can just step away and not have to even worry about your CRM or your leads. You can just hire someone and put them in place. And what happens when that occurs? Well, all of a sudden you have free time to focus on the things that actually will grow your business. And some of you might be familiar with the concept of the 80-20 principle. That is like what's at the root of having the best possible systems in place, because it gives you as the founder, or even if this is your job, it lets you focus on the 20% of your job that's producing 80% of the results.
Right.
And the essential few versus the all the numerous stuff that doesn't actually make you any money. And
right. And there's a lot of that out there.
It's a lot of that out there. And I think you need to, everybody starting out in this business is going to have to just deal with the overwhelm and use grit and persistence to thoroughly understand the words that we're talking about, because you have to put it into practice to truly experience it. And once you go 80-20, you never go back.
I mean, we could talk about the E-Myth, right? So, and every entrepreneur starts out with being the one to go out and do the work to make money. You have to be the technician. You have to be that one that goes out and does what needs to get done to generate revenue. But as time goes on, you have to get out of that role on a full-time basis, right? I mean, you have to be able to focus on growing your business instead of just making money and just bringing revenue. And it's like, how do I get to that next level? So this could be a transition to be there. That
exactly. So what I'll do for all your listeners is, if they go to InvestorFuse.com/Scott, I'm gonna give you a chart that I made called the 80-20 task cheat sheet, which breaks down the dollar value of the tasks that you're doing. So it basically tells you all the tasks that are $10 per hour activities that you shouldn't be doing, $100 hour activities that someone else should be doing. And then it gives you two columns: $1,000 activities, like upper level management related stuff, and then $10,000 per hour, like the high level business growth, working on your business activities. And I list out all of those things so you guys can actually use that, print it out, hang it up on your wall, and just to serve as a constant reminder of how valuable is your time.
Right.
If you go to that link, we'll include a PDF download of that for you guys.
Awesome. Thanks for doing that. Appreciate that. I'm sure all the listeners do as well. Let's talk about the business in and of itself, though, because this isn't in the tech world, right? I mean, you're building a tech company more or less. I mean, it's a CRM, but it's tech based. So what is the biggest obstacle that you've had to kind of go through in order to get to where you're at now, where you're able to serve 600 companies or, serve these people? I mean, what has been a very big challenge that you've had to overcome?
Customer support, customer experience.
Okay.
When you work with 600 companies that all have 3 or more team members, there's a lot of hands to hold. And even when it was just me or John and I starting out, we made it our mission to make sure to not leave anyone hanging ever. And that is a challenge to scale because it's such a people-oriented side of the business. So what we realized we had to do is we really had to create a culture within our organization that embodied that. Never, always provide extra and never leave a customer hanging, and really just align and listen to and come up with solutions, because I know investors are very solutions minded. They don't want excuses. They don't want to wait for responses. So we had to learn the hard way, using our capacity to its full extent. And we ended up growing a full, now we have 15 total people, 3/4 of which are customer facing. So I think the hardest thing for a tech company is just creating an amazing experience for the customer to make sure that they're actually getting the benefit that they originally sought when they bought the product.
Right.
So really I see my job now is not only to give real estate entrepreneurs the tools to be successful, but give them all the other tools that they need to be successful as well. Like we created the Modern Marketing Masterclass to make sure that they have resources to generate leads.
Yep.
Because I think it's important to note that InvestorFuse doesn't generate leads. It just captures your existing lead flow, and it helps you in a structured and organized way take those new leads to closed, and all the follow-up and all the handoffs between your team members that happens in between. And then coaching, and then mindset and team building and all of these other things that really crucially need in order to be successful and to grow it and to scale yourself out of the business. So I think that's sort of when we launch a new feature or we create new content, it's with that in mind, to make sure that investors have everything that they needed to be successful. And all of us sort of now finally we got it down to a science, and we're ready to really scale this up, because that is the hardest part if you're starting a tech company, is making sure your support is rock solid. And we have one of the best support teams out there right now. If you just look at our Facebook reviews, it speaks volumes.
Right. And it's definitely a company that, InvestorFuse in general has had its evolution, right? Because it started off, when it originally started off, it was, there were lots of different pieces that came into play, right? It wasn't just, it was Podio, but then there was all these third-party,
so many
other
pieces.
Companies, so many pieces, right? And then if you had one problem with one, it was just a mess. It was a huge mess. And so let's kind of talk about the evolution of how InvestorFuse has changed, going from the original to InvestorFuse, and what the future is going to look like.
So Podio. We've all been using Podio. I think maybe 80% of the industry uses Podio, and they have felt the pain of having to customize Podio and plug in third-party apps and figure out the automation and become a tech nerd automation guru. And I realized that that's really only appealing to 1% of the investor population that's into that. They're into diving into the nitty-gritty process, analytical minds. But the majority of investors are not that personality type. And the complexities of Podio became a burden for a lot of our customers. And it also became a huge burden on us, not being able to deliver what are very frustrating for me to see complaints about the system that I had no control over.
Right.
So at a certain point, it made sense for us to reinvest our profits and build out a standalone system that is actually simple to use. So for 2.5 years, we created the best Podio system, I believe, out there. It doesn't require any setup. Like, you can just sign up and you're good. It's like its own standalone system, but it's interfacing through Podio, which is this CRM that isn't built for real estate investing. It's actually built for agencies and small businesses like that. It's not meant for like thousands of leads. So we sort of we brute forced our way into a lead management system for real estate investing. And I think the beauty of that, and I think this could be applied to your real estate investing business as well, is when you take steps to deliver solutions to the people you're serving, they don't care how you're delivering the results they want. Like, it doesn't matter what the medium is. So Podio, they just want the results.
Right.
So that allowed us to really hone in what exactly people need. And what we found is people need simplicity. They want to, especially for CRMs, which is a dirty word for most investors. It's something that they don't want to have to deal with. It's like I got to go and log into my CRM now.
Unnecessary evil. Yeah.
It's an unnecessary evil. And when it's on Podio, a lot of you might relate, you feel like you're not getting the most out of it because there's so many features and functions and customizations to make. So what we've done is built a system off of Podio that is launching officially actually in 2 weeks. And Scott will be one of the users, and we're calling it InvestorFuse 2.0. And it is very, very intuitive. It's one screen. It's not multiple apps like it is in Podio. It's the essential, vital elements of Podio, like being able to filter your leads, being able to see your opportunities in a pipeline format. So you can see if you went into your opportunities screen, you'll see, lead qualification leads that are in follow-up, leads that you're currently pursuing, and then finally leads that are in your transactions bucket or contract. So now you have a visual of your entire pipeline in a really clean way, and your whole team has that, and it's action-based. So the problem with most CRMs is the tasking and the tasks that you get often are super redundant, and you might get a task that someone else is responsible for, and it just becomes a mess, and you start to ignore your tasks because they're not useful. So we really put a lot of thought and effort into how to create a system that dishes out the right action to the right team member based on your settings that we help you program at the right time. That includes setting in the follow-up sequences. It includes, setting appointments, making the offer, going on the appointments, every possible thing that you need to do between when a lead comes in to close. We've basically figured out a way to do it one decision point at a time. So I know it sounds like too good to be true, but we really did make it drop dead simple. And
pretty excited.
Yeah. You can just check out InvestorFuse.com. By the time this is released, you'll see some demos and some pictures of it.
I think by the time this is released, actually, it's gonna be live because we're gonna be further out than 2 weeks, so it'll definitely be live by this point. Cool. By the time everybody's listening to it. So, yeah, man. I mean, I'm very excited. It's been one of those things that has been a game changer for me in my business. So it's just the evolution, and I think one of the important pieces that I kind of want the listeners to understand is the evolution of what this is. When it started with real automation, 4 years ago, whatever it was, 5 years ago, that was the very beginning. But because us as investors in general always evolve, things have had to evolve for you, right? Mm-hmm. You decided that having all these third parties wasn't efficient. So now all of a sudden you built InvestorFuse. And InvestorFuse was on a system that you thought was the right system at the time. And through, signing up 600 companies and through 2.5 years of basically figuring it out, trial and error, you figured out that wasn't the right thing. That piece that wasn't working is Podio, which you couldn't control. So what did you do? You changed it. And I think that's the big overall picture that I want the investors to understand, is that everything is always changing. We're always evolving. Things change. They're not always how you think they're going to be. But if you have grit and you just keep going and try to find solutions for the problems that you have, you'll always get better, right?
That's huge, man. There's always a workaround.
Always.
You always find it right before you give up.
Always. Right. So, as 2.0 is going to be released, and as that's going to become, the new go-to for CRM systems for real estate investors, what piece of advice could you give to the listeners out there that aren't using or maybe have been using, InvestorFuse 1.0 and are resilient to switch or don't want to switch for whatever reason? I don't know why that.
Well, you have to stay with the times, first of all, because I believe that within 5 years, we're going to be an integral part of this. Lead management is just going to be a given. Like it's going to be perfected, and you're really not going to have to worry about it too much. Not a lot of time expenditure will be going into follow up and lead management, which is my goal. I want that to take that completely off of your plate. What does that mean? That means that you have the first opportunity right now, before artificial intelligence gets involved, which we have plans for, and before things get crazy with technology, you have to go and hone your people skills. You need to hone your persuasion skills, your negotiation skills, your team building skills, your systems thinking, your creative thinking. The things that make you human will matter even more after you don't have to worry about CRMs.
Right.
So I believe that's, one, if you don't have a CRM, make sure you get one now. Even if you're just starting out, maybe you can use a spreadsheet. Just get used to the burden that a CRM is. Like, get used to the fact that you need to record all your data about every lead. You need to record the stage, and you need to record a next action for every single opportunity that comes across your desk. Understand that, and you'll be able to scale your company. But I think more importantly is really understanding how to build a machine around that process, and getting really good at negotiating with sellers, or finding people that are really good negotiators for sellers, understanding the market, all of the real estate stuff, like, or finding someone that's really good at the real estate stuff, and just being at the helm and controlling all the pieces of the machine. But I think those like entrepreneurial people skills, I think now more than ever are important for investors, especially newer investors, to learn.
Are super, yeah, and very, very important. So, I mean, I'm so excited. It's been such a cool journey to see you go from the very beginning to where we're at now. And I can only imagine what's going to happen 5 years from now, right? I mean, in the last 5 years, through the help of InvestorFuse and what you've built, I've been able to scale my business. And I know many, many other people have as well. And so what the next step looks like, who really knows, and yeah. I think as artificial intelligence does become a real part of life, because it's coming, yeah. And just tech in general is becoming such a big influence on the real estate investment space. You got to be ahead of the game. You got to be ahead of the times. And so that's what you're trying to bring to everybody out there. So thank you for that.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you for holding me accountable all these years, and you're crushing it. I don't want to give the good news, but he's doing well.
Yeah. Things are good. So, I think that's a really good kind of segue. Appreciate you being here and sharing all the information, but let's go into a lightning round. You ready for that?
Yeah.
All right. What is your hashtag Invest tip? If you could think of one that you can give to the listeners to keep them moving forward.
If you feel stuck, have a conversation.
Okay. Elaborate on that just a little bit.
Yep. I paused for a reason so it could sink in. If you get stuck and have a conversation, you will find that next action step. Don't just put a post up and wholesaling houses full time. Actually get on the phone and talk to someone. It could be your mom. But having a conversation with another human, at least in my life, has always helped me unpack why I'm stuck and figure out exactly why I'm hung up on taking the next step. And it'll help you determine what that next step is. Man,
that is huge. That is massive, because we all get stuck here, right? We get stuck between the ears on what's going on in your own head. You don't talk about it. And as soon as you do, you're right. You always you solve the problem.
That's it. If you have no other options, you always have conversation. So I would recommend that. And then there's a website called clarity.fm, which gives you access to the world on any subject at all. If you want to learn how to build rockets, there's someone on there that'll teach you. If you want to learn how to invest in real estate, there's plenty of real estate coaches on there that charge by the minute. But it gives you a quick outlet, if you don't know anyone, to just pay for their time and ask the questions that are going in your head.
And like you said earlier in the call, there's always a workaround, right? Yep. You can always find, especially in the information age that we live in, there's always an answer. Mm-hmm. Somebody out there knows it. And if you just go to this thing called Google, they'll probably help you find it.
Yeah, YouTube. And then the importance of having a coach as well, which I'm sure you talk about all the time, but
right.
It's essential.
Very essential.
Business.
What's your favorite book that you ever read, and what has the impact been for you?
I would say so 4 Hour Work Week is a given.
Right.
But everybody knows that book.
Especially for you.
Especially for me. I live a very nomadic lifestyle business type of life, changing soon. But I believe that the book, The Code of the Extraordinary Mind by Vishen Lakhiani, who runs a popular info product business called Mind Valley, The Code of the Extraordinary Mind is a great summation of all of the basically modern personal growth mindset. It tells you how to abandon conventional thinking and do what's right. And it actually dives into a really good goal setting strategy that is a little non-conventional, but it's something that we use internally at InvestorFuse. It's called the 3 Most Important Questions. And it's a great read, highly informative, and it'll get your brain thinking about alternative ways to do things that not necessarily are mainstream, but might be more aligned with who you are as a person.
Who wrote that?
Vishen, Vishen, Lakiani, Code of the Extraordinary Mind.
I want to ask you to spell Lakiani because I'll find it.
Yeah.
I haven't read that one, but I'm going to order that. It sounds
so good. Yeah.
And kind of, like we just talked about, coaches are important. People are important in your life. The people you spend your time with are important. But, who would you say has given you the best advice? And what was the impact of that advice on your life or your business or both?
Yeah. One of my mentors when I was living in Baltimore, Mark Owens, who is a landlord who owns a couple hundred units in Baltimore, once told me, you can't catch a rabbit if you're chasing 2 at the same time. So I realized that I was at that point that I was touring full time and I was pursuing, that musician life while also trying to scale this business and helping people with Podio and like doing all these things. Can't catch a rabbit if you're chasing multiple ones at the same time. So focusing on one path and putting all of your 80-20 energy onto that. Life is short, guys. Like, you have to make sure that whatever you're pursuing, you're giving it everything and not half-assing multiple things, because it's just something
That's
you have
huge.
to learn.
That's huge, actually. That makes so much sense. And I think for real estate entrepreneurs in general, that's a massive statement, because with shiny object syndrome, it's very easy. As you know, and everybody else I'm sure on the call knows, you can make money, a lot of money, in every different aspect of real estate investment possible, right?
Yep.
And it's very easy to get, sidetracked on the squirrel syndrome and chase multiple different things. So thank you for sharing that. That's huge.
Yeah, and a good book summation of that concept is The One Thing by Gary Keller.
Yep.
So a lot of real estate people might know that because he's Gary Keller. I would highly recommend reading The One Thing.
Yeah, that's massive. That's a big one. How do you like to give back? InvestorFuse has grown a ton, right? I don't even know what the number that you would say from a percentage standpoint that it's grown, but because you're affecting all these people, you have an influence on all these people. How do you like to give back?
Yeah. So personally, aside from just keeping the innovation going at InvestorFuse, what I have is my time and the resources that we've cultivated. So what we're going to do is the coming mastermind event that we're having in Austin, Texas. We are actually giving the proceeds, all the profit we make from that, we're giving to Pencils of Promise, which is a foundation that builds schools in underdeveloping countries. And we picked Ghana because I believe that Africa is the future, because they're a clean slate and they're going to soon be a very serious force to reckon with. And we believe that just helping that process along, given the resources and the community that we've built, is the least we can do. And I think it's going to plant a tree that will eventually flower into something much bigger. So yeah, we're starting our philanthropic efforts this year by donating. It's going to be around $25,000 to Pencils of Promise. So donating money is one thing, but we're also constantly trying to think of how we can actually donate our time towards something that matters and helping each other grow. I think the most important thing is for people that seek growth and personal development, which not a lot of people do, you just need to lead by example. So it's not selfish to better yourself if it helps someone else realize their full potential.
It's huge, man. Appreciate that. And I'm going to be at that mastermind. So
yes.
Those of you out there that also want to be part of it, we'll go into the next question here. How can they get in touch with you if they want to learn more about InvestorFuse, how to get plugged into 2.0, because it's going to be phenomenal. All the listeners out there, I don't think this isn't a sales pitch, definitely not a sales pitch, but if you want to change your business, get onto InvestorFuse. If you're in the investment space, it's worth it. So anyways, how can they reach out?
Even if not, you can just go to our blog or our YouTube page, and you see we have hundreds of hours of customer case studies and content, videos about how to manage your leads properly. So if you don't want to use InvestorFuse, that's fine. You're more than welcome to all the content that we put out to help you get to that next level. So eventually you might need InvestorFuse when you have too many leads to manage.
Yep.
So you can reach, if you have questions about the product itself, please don't contact me. Just email info@investorfuse.com.
Okay.
We have a full team that is way better suited to handle those types of questions than I am. If you want to contact me personally, if you have any questions, about strategically growing your business, which is my passion and working with entrepreneurs, or if you just need a connection with someone in the space that I might know, just email dan@investorfuse.com and I will definitely not leave you hanging.
Awesome. Sounds good, man. Well, hey, I appreciate you being here, sharing all kind of the journey of InvestorFuse and kind of what you're doing now.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm stuck on your quote. Can't catch a rabbit if you're chasing two, because that one's massive. That one is a massive piece. So anyways, if you're feeling stuck, guys, go have a conversation with somebody about it.
Yeah.
Make sure you're always reading. You're finding new books to read. You got a couple of good ones, Code of Extraordinary Mind and The 4-Hour Workweek, of course, not to mention The One Thing by Gary Keller. And, what you're doing with giving back to the people and building up Ghana, which is going to be huge. Mm-hmm. Congratulations on that. That's massive.
Well, we'll see how we do.
Right. Anyways, thanks, man. Appreciate you being here, and we'll talk to you real soon.
Thanks, Scott. See you guys.
Yeah.